What's up everyone, this is CoyneDawg here on the GTA video. So in this video we're returning back to the head-to-head series. So today we've got the Itali GTB Custom versus the Penetrator. So the first test we've got is the 2 mile drag, and this is basically just a 2 mile long straight to test acceleration. So the reason I've paired these two cars up against each other is I was kind of running out of vehicles that I already had. I had the Itali GTB Custom from previous, and the Penetrator was on offer through the Rockstar store, so I thought I'd buy it. And when I first did this test, I thought I'd made a big mistake by pairing these up against each other. As you can see already, the Penetrator has fallen so far behind, and we're not even halfway down this track yet. The acceleration of that vehicle is really not very good at all, and I would imagine its top speed isn't great either, although we don't really see that too much from this test. But yeah, when I saw that, I thought maybe I shouldn't have put these two against each other and I should have looked for something else. So as you can see from the testing score there, so we can see that the Itali GTB Custom is 1.2 seconds quicker than the Penetrator, so it's a very significant advantage on, you know, quite a short distance. So next up we've got test 2, which is Bridging the Gap, which is a bumpy street circuit with mainly low speed corners. So first up we've got the Itali GTB Custom. So I mentioned in the previous video for the Itali GTB that it was a little bit skitty over bumps, etc. This is no different. In fact, it's worse. On this, especially on this track, obviously the big difference between the GTB and the Custom is the downforce statistic that the Custom vehicle has. So obviously that aids, or should aid, if it was a decent downforce factor around high-speed corners. Well, this track hasn't really got any high-speed corners. You know, it's lots of low-speed corners and bumpy sections, which this car just doesn't handle very well. You've probably seen from the video footage here that it skits around a lot over bumps and all that sort of stuff. The braking on it seems a bit inconsistent as well. The braking distances were strange and a little bit unpredictable sometimes, which didn't really make sense. I've never really experienced that before. But you know, it's a real shame for this car because I prefer the look of this car over the normal GTB, but the way it handles and obviously the performance advantage between the two is just too big. And then we've got the Penetrator, and this is when I really started to realise how much of a missed opportunity this vehicle had been for Rockstar. This car handles so well. It over bumps. It's so planted. You know, it's so smooth. The back end is very planted. It's a beautiful car in terms of how it handles, in my opinion. One of the best that I've driven so far in this testing series. But unfortunately, as we've seen previously, the acceleration of the vehicle lets it down. However, on this track, where you've got lots of low-speed corners, and obviously acceleration does matter, but the cornering ability of the vehicle is more important. It didn't show itself up at all, and I started to see then that actually I hadn't made a mistake by putting these two vehicles together. They do have quite good contrasting strengths and weaknesses. Obviously the Itali GTB Custom, in terms of its cornering ability on this track, wasn't great, but it does have better acceleration and speed out of the corners than the Penetrator, that corners better but doesn't have the speed. So they kind of balanced each other out quite well. And the ultimate result for the test was that the Penetrator was actually quicker by 0.4 of a second. So, you know, it gets a trophy there, which, you know, I was quite impressed with, to be honest. And then finally we've got the last test, which is Dock Points. So Dock Points is a smooth stump piece circuit with mainly mid to high speed corners. So obviously this is now a high speed circuit compared to the previous one. So as I mentioned with the Itali GTB Custom, which struggled a bit with bumps and all that sort of stuff, it doesn't really have that issue on this circuit. We've obviously got higher speed cornering on very, very flat surfaces, so it handles much better. It's still not perfect by any means. You can still tell that downforce statistic that it has is just not adequate, especially through this section here. So we've obviously got very high speed corners here, which the downforce statistic in theory should help it get through very well, but it doesn't really. It's okay, but there's been cars without downforce that have gone through better than that. The Penetrator actually, in my opinion, goes through that section better than this vehicle does. So yeah, it's a little bit of a shame for it, to be honest. I just really wish that they'd not messed the vehicles up the way they have. But I guess the Rockstar, we've come to get used to the way they do things now, with mixing vehicles up and putting things in the wrong class and all those stupid things that they do. But yeah, so we've then got the Penetrator, and obviously this track is now going to show up the inadequacy that we saw in the very first test of its acceleration speeds. So obviously with being a high-speed circuit, it doesn't really play to the strengths of this vehicle. But the cornering ability of this vehicle does make up for it somewhat on the track. I really wish that Rockstar had just given it that little bit more acceleration and speed, because it could have been, wouldn't have taken much, but this could have been really competitive with the rest of the cars right at the very top of the supercars class there, if it had just been given that speed that it needs, because the handling and all that sort of stuff, in my opinion, is very, very well balanced with this vehicle. In fact, the only thing I would say about it is it almost feels quite artificial in the way it drives, because it is so planted. So yeah, I guess in some ways, from a not that this game's realistic, but you know what I mean, in terms of how it handles, it's nice to be able to feel like you're driving the car a little bit, whereas this doesn't, if you know what I mean. So the results on the test from that were, obviously, it was only a 1/4 of a second difference, but the Itali GTB Custom was quicker. So obviously that makes it the winner of the whole test. So yeah, that was the comparison of the two vehicles. As you can see, although the initial test made it look like it was going to be a complete win for the Itali GTB Custom, the Penetrator did manage to get itself up there on test 2. So that's it, to be honest, guys. So I'll be back again on Sunday with the alternative tests to look at the off-road performance and all that sort of stuff of these vehicles. So feel free to check back then. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll speak to you again soon. Thanks very much.